What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week 34 preview. I'm just going to go through a bunch of questions that you have put to me today. This probably will be the final video before the deadline stream tomorrow. I have also done a written article for 888 Sport. There is a link in the description below if you want to check that out. So jumping right into it. This is kind of a two-part question. What should we do with Rudiger? And is it better to go with Man City defenders instead of Chelsea defenders? One thing you're going to find throughout this video, I'm struggling a little bit with what to think about Chelsea, right? They've got an extra fixture this week, extra fixture in Game Week 36. On paper, it looks brilliant. We should be taking hits to get them in. It makes a lot of sense. But I'm already set up for Game Week 36. That second game, the Leeds game, mass rotation before the FA Cup. I just don't see why that won't happen. Unless for some reason, Chelsea have lost the 3 games before that, and so top 4 is now looking like an actual worry. They're rotating that Leeds game. They could also rotate this week as well. They've got West Ham at home, Man United away. I think there's probably less rotation this week. So they look good for this week, but the fixtures aren't that easy. And obviously then they got Everton, then they got a double, which probably won't be a double for most players. So it's tricky, right? Let me get on to the Rudiger part first. You get rid of him, I think. I don't really see too much reason to hold on to him. He doesn't necessarily have a huge amount of upside. He is attacking-ish, right? I know he scored that goal recently. It was from miles outside the area. He ain't repeating that anytime soon. I think you get rid. It sounds like he's going to miss the West Ham game, and then he may struggle to also make the Man United game as well. So I think you probably just get rid of him, even if that has to be for a hit. I still think that Reece James is the best option from... If we assume that most people have got Cancelo already, I think Reece James is the best option, right? I know people are liking Alonso right now. Part of that is his price, but I just think Tuchel's going to do his best to get Reece James into the side, whether it's right centre-back or right wing-back, whereas Sal could play left wing-back. They could at some point play a back 4, even though it hasn't necessarily gone that well for Chelsea. I still think Reece James is the better option. Then between Alonso and Man City, it gets really tough. I think if Man City's double gets confirmed before the deadline for Game Week 36, I may even argue that they're a better option to go for, especially if you don't think that Alonso is going to play both games in this double. If you do, he's the one to go for because he does have upside. And recently, I think he's done okay. So I think he's probably played himself somewhat back into the good books with Tuchel and Chelsea. But to be honest, with any play you go for from Chelsea, most of them anyway, there's going to be a bit of risk. So I'd probably order them Reece James at the top. Cancelo for sure if you don't own him, and probably Alonso just ahead of Laporte. But if that double for 36 gets confirmed, you could argue that Man City, probably with a little bit less rotation, are better options. Okay, so a lot of us got Fernandes last week. Now a lot of people looking to take him out. So is it worth taking out Bruno Fernandes for Havertz? I mean, this could be any Chelsea midfielder, mostly obviously Havertz and Mason Mount. Is it then worth using a -4 to get another Chelsea player, right? So obviously once you do Fernandes to Havertz, you get a lot of money left over. This is literally the predicament that I'm in right now. I'm almost certainly going to do Bruno Fernandes to Havertz because although Fernandes has a double, I don't have another way to get a different Chelsea player without making a downgrade somewhere, and Fernandes isn't someone that I want long term. For what it's worth, I wouldn't usually take out any player before a double game week. It's just that Fernandes is holding so much money, and if you ask me who I want to captain between Fernandes or Havertz this week, it probably is Havertz. The one thing to say about Fernandes is he's definitely going to start both games, which is probably not something you can 100% say for Havertz and Mount. For what it's worth, I think there is a good chance they both start both games. But with Fernandes, he almost certainly will, right? But yeah, I am going to take out Fernandes to Havertz. So I guess actions speak louder than words, right? Is it then worth a -4 to get another Chelsea player? This is where I'm really stuck. So I could get Mason Mount in for Kulusevski, for Saka, or for Rafinha. I could even get Werner in for one of my strikers. A lot of people probably thinking about Werner versus Havertz versus Mount. I prefer both the midfielders over Werner. There's just something about him. Maybe it's just a bit of bias from the past. I can't bring myself to think that he's now as nailed as those two and he's going to keep delivering the points. I mean, his underlying numbers are great, right? They really are right up there in terms of goal threat, has a bit of assist threat too. I'm just not sure about going for him. But in terms of, without going into specific player details, would I take another -4? I would if that player is then being held for Game Week 36. If you're already thinking about shipping them after Game Week 35, then there's maybe less reason to do it. But you could also set yourself up in a way where you've got that player to then move on. So for example, if I go for Havertz and Mount, then in game week 36, one of them will probably turn into Foden, and it gives me the opportunity of choosing which one I think is most likely to play twice, which ones maybe had a rest beforehand, and then obviously move them on. So it could be worth it. It depends who you're taking out. Like, do I think that if I'm doing Fernandes to Havertz, do I think that Mount outscores Saka, Kulusevski or Rafinha by more than 4 points? I think it's pretty close. And I think ultimately I probably will just take the risk that happens, because they do have a good fixture in game week 35 as well. And they do have a potential double, and they're good placeholders for other players like Foden, like maybe even Coutinho as well. So yes to the first question, probably yes to the second one as well. All right, when's the next best triple captain opportunity outside of Salah in game week 36? For what it's worth, Salah in game week 36 probably is the best triple captaincy left. If this question has been asked because you just don't want to use it in 36 because maybe you're bench boosted, maybe you're free hitting, then I think you do want to use it on a double game week player. So you're either looking at Havertz or Mount or Werner probably this week. I think they're all better than Fernandes and probably better than Ronaldo as well. Though if Ronaldo plays both games, who knows, right? And then in game week 37, Coutinho with 2 home games probably looks like the best option. You could go for a differential, maybe like Richarlison or someone like that instead. If you wanted to go single game week, then punting on a Man City player this week against Watford or next week against Leeds and trying to guess the rotation could be decent. So Sterling this week, for example, is a player that a lot of people are looking at. If you want to use it in 36 and you don't want to use it on Salah, then Kevin De Bruyne could be an outside shot as well. They would have, I think it's Newcastle and Wolves in game week 36 if the double gets put in game week 36. The only thing is, we still don't know that for sure. I think a lot of the fixture planners like Ben and James, etc., they're all expecting it to go into game week 36 now, but it hasn't been confirmed. It could still go into game week 37. So I think they're the best options left. I don't think there's too many other kind of single game week players that I'd necessarily use it on. Like Jota this week against Everton, for example, he should start, but it's always a little bit of a risk trying to guess rotation for teams like that. Last day of the season, maybe there's some good fixtures. Chelsea are playing Watford at home, for example. Watford could be down and out by that point, but I think I would use it on a double game week. The players on screen are probably the main ones I'd look at. So there's quite a few questions about hits. I've got another specific one later on to do with the bench boost. There was one question I haven't put in the video, but I'm going to answer anyway, which is about how many more hits realistically can we take for the rest of the season? There's only 5 game weeks left. Now, in a normal season, the closer you get to the end of the season, you want to kind of reduce the hits a little bit because it's much more difficult to get like an instant repayment. Like usually when you're taking a hit outside of like injuries and stuff like that, it's to get a player that you hope outscores the player you're taking out that week. But if not, they're probably going to do it over the next kind of 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. You're going to get those points back. The less game weeks there are, the less easy that is to happen. But this season, we've only got 5 game weeks left. 3 of them are double game weeks, right? So things are different to normal. For example, if you've got no chips left, no free hit, no wild card, then Villa, Leicester, Everton, they're all players that have got doubles back to back. I won't go into whether or not those players are worth buying, but the gist of it is that hits might be more valuable this season at this late stage than they have been in previous seasons, right? This specific question, would you take a hit to get a Man City defender this week? So I do think Cancelo's got a little bit less of a chance to be rotated than Laporte. I think Kyle Walker is not confirmed to be out for the season. He's not also confirmed to be back this week. I think Pep said he's getting better. We will see tomorrow if he's available. He also said that John Stones had a little niggle. Little problems like Nathan today, that's Nathan Ake. We'll make an assessment tomorrow. We'll decide. So his defenders might have, you know, slight knocks here or there. So I think Cancelo will probably be fine. Laporte should be fine too. Maybe not as much, and probably not as much upside as Cancelo either. But realistically, it's going to come down to who you're benching, okay? So if I bring up my team, right, let's say I do Fernandes to Havertz and I do one of my other midfielders to Mount, that still leaves me in the 3-5-2. So is it worth doing Tierney or Luca Dean, who are probably both going to miss the rest of the season, to a Man City defender? Arguably, well, obviously, yes, right? Laporte is going to outscore. I've already got Cancelo. Laporte is going to outscore Luca Dean and Tierney before the end of the season because neither of them are going to play. But this week, I would have to bench Weghorst. So is it worth a -4 to bench Weghorst for Laporte? Probably not. You could maybe make an argument for Cancelo because he's a much more attacking defender. But ultimately, that is what, you know, the dependence is going to be on. If you've got no bench or you've got a really awful player that you have to play, the hit could be worth it because they've got really good fixtures to come. They've got at least one more double game week to come. Shouldn't be a huge amount of rotation because the league is still there to be won as well. It all depends on who you're replacing and who you're getting rid of. But at this point in time, hits are definitely still worth it. In fact, I'm probably going to have to take a hit for the next kind of 3 weeks, I think. So this question's about free hit. Is free hit in Game Week 34 worth considering with the upside of targeting players from Man City, Chelsea and Liverpool? Someone else also asked me about free hit 34 versus 37. Now, why are people looking at free hit 34? So I made a team. I'm not giving this a huge amount of thought, but I put together a team pretty quickly, and I've kept Salah in there. If you were confident enough or brave enough to risk no Salah, you could go proper different. But one of the reasons people are liking the look of it this week is you can get 1 or 2 Newcastle players in for Norwich, right? That's not a bad fixture to target. You can also go for your 3 Chelsea players and then not have to hold them going forward. So again, if you think their minutes are a concern in 35 or 36, you free hit them in, you don't have to carry them forward, you can target other players instead. Another thing people are looking at it's not just getting the best players from these teams, it's being able to get players that other people cannot get because they're not good long-term options. But players like Jota you see in the team, Sterling, maybe Jesus as well, they are all players that could play this week but are not guaranteed minutes for the rest of the season. Everton at home, Watford at home, both really good fixtures. There could be huge points there. The only thing that kind of springs to mind is how many people are going to captain one of those big differentials? I just think because it's a double game week for Chelsea, you're still probably likely to captain one of the Chelsea boys. You could go Werner, that could be a big differential over Mount and Havertz, however you want to set it up. I just think that kind of takes a little bit of the shine off having all those other players. If I'm 100% honest here, I'm not sure how confident I am about whether 34 or 37 is better. What I am fairly confident with, that 36 is not the best week to free hit because most people are going to have 11 double game weekers anyway. And yes, it won't be the perfect team, but I don't think it will be as far off as the free hit team versus your normal team in 34 and 37. I'm siding towards 37 because I look at this team, which is my team this week. I can get 2 more Chelsea players in for a -4. Okay, I haven't got Sterling, Jesus or Jota or someone like that, but I think the rest of my team is okay. I don't think it's so bad that I'm going to get massively punished by those players. Whereas my team in 37, there's a lot of players that are doubling, like Everton, like Villa. I know they're not as exciting, I get that, but I don't really want them in my team in other weeks. And so getting them in for 37 and maybe getting back my triple Spurs, for example, who've got Burnley at home, that could all be ways to kind of hopefully climb up the ranks. So I'm fairly sure they're not 100% confident because I'm really finding 34, 35, 36 and 37 a bit of a headache, if I'm completely honest. 36, I think, is the worst week to free hit, given how things are probably going to fall, because I think most people will be close to a decent team anyway. Then it's between 34 and 37. I'm siding with 37, but I don't think it's too far away from 34 being better. I told you there was another question about hits. If you were to take hits to set up for a bench boost, how many hits outweigh the benefit of the chip? Now, again, going back to what I said before, if you're taking a hit to get a bench boost player in that's then going to help you for the rest of the season, it's maybe not too bad. The problem is most of these players are going to be doing what they're there for, which is to sit on your bench, right? So you're only really getting the benefit out of them for the week that you bench boost in. So realistically, and it's hard to get, I think in FPL in general, it's hard to give evergreen advice because it's all going to come down to, you know, if you get that player in, okay, it gives you a bench boost advantage, but does it then let you spend extra money on another move the week after, which is then going to improve your total points potential, right? So there's all these things to consider. I think once you start going over a -8, I then have to question whether there's just a different week that you could bench boost in instead that might be a little bit better. I think if you're spending -12s, -16s, I think 16 points is kind of the least I would expect from a bench boost anyway. I think if you get 16 to 20 points, you're probably happy. If you're already having to spend 16 of those points to get that bench boost, maybe it's not worth it. It's a difficult chip, especially at this stage of the season if you haven't got the wild card to set up. But it doesn't... One thing I would say, it doesn't have to be used in 36. If you can get a better bench in a different week, it's perfectly fine to use that. Even if you have to use it on single game weekers and not use it on double game weekers, that's fine as well. Now, obviously, you want to set up for double game week players on your bench boost if you can. But if there's a difference between using it on a single game week and not taking the hit, that's probably almost as good as getting a double game week player in and taking the hit. And again, it's all going to come down to which player that is. So I think -8 is probably okay. Once it starts getting to -12s, -16s, you've really got to be sure that's the right move. So maybe I should have put this question at the start, but whatever, we're doing it now. What are the advantages of going Havertz over Mount and vice versa? I find the way the question's worded a little bit funny, because the only advantage we should be thinking about is points. Who's going to score the most points, right? Now, I am deciding between these two. Now, originally I was looking at Mount. Then I put Havertz in the watch list, and I actually slightly went back towards Mount after that. But now I'm firmly on Havertz as the best choice for this week. It is close, right? It could be one of those decisions, a bit like Ronaldo and Fernandes last week, where one of them scores massive and the other one doesn't. That's FPL, that's football, it happens. The reason that I'm probably going for Havertz in and then maybe taking a -4 for Mason Mount rather than going for Mount and then maybe taking a -4 for Havertz is Havertz just had a rest against Arsenal. I do not think that Lukaku did anywhere near enough to warrant a start against West Ham at home. I think Havertz gets straight back in as the number 9. They might carry on playing, you know, with 2 up front, but Havertz is going to play up front either way, right? Whether they play over 2 or a 1 striker formation, okay? So Havertz is going to play. And then I feel like there's probably a good chance he gets Man United away. Yes, there's that FA Cup final to come, but there's a few games before that, right? So I think there's no reason why Havertz also couldn't play Man United. With Mason Mount, he didn't get a rest last time. Now, he doesn't necessarily get rested that often. He does play a lot. He plays 90 minutes a lot as well. So he could also play both those games. I just think if I had to bet a bit of money, I'd probably put it on Havertz just about. There is every chance they both start and they both do really well. The other thing is, underlying numbers, Havertz tends to have a little bit more goal threat. In terms of expected goal involvement, XG plus expected assists, they kind of even out. But Havertz has a little bit more of an eye for goal. That's another reason to look at him. And also, he might be on penalties. Now, I said earlier in the week that I thought Mason Mount might be on penalties when Jorginho's not on the pitch. I think it was FPL Tribbiani on Twitter kind of said to me that might not be the case. So I looked it up. Havertz took a penalty. I think it was in the Club World Cup. Is that what it's called? I'm not even going to go and look it up. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. 118th minute, and he said afterwards he was nervous and that he was kind of third choice taker, but Jorginho wasn't on the pitch and neither was Lukaku. They were the 2 names that he mentioned. That kind of made it sound like Havertz was ahead of Mount in the pecking order, right? But Mount wasn't on the pitch. So maybe that's why he didn't mention it. But then again, he mentioned Lukaku and Jorginho. So it looks like he's maybe third choice and he's maybe ahead of Mount. The only thing I will say is neither of those two have taken a penalty while the other one's been on the pitch. So we don't know for sure, but I think Havertz, looking at it, is probably just ahead of him. What could happen is they might get a penalty and Jorginho could be on the pitch and it might not matter. But that's why I'm slightly favouring Havertz. The only counter to my own points about getting Havertz is, if you're then keeping this Chelsea player for the rest of the season, I probably would put Mason Mount ahead of Havertz for minutes. So in that way, if you're not just looking at this week, but maybe future game weeks as well, Mount could be a slightly better option. But I really think it's close. If you're using these players as a placeholder to get Foden or whatever midfielder you want in for game week 35 or 36, then I think Havertz is better this week. I think longer term, and I say longer term as in just the last 5 game weeks of the season, maybe Mount's just ahead. But I think Havertz, we all know now, is the number 9 first choice. Lukaku could take minutes off him. Ziyech could take minutes off Mount. Pulisic could take minutes off Werner. You know, stuff can happen, right? It's football, it's FPL, like I said. So I'm going for Havertz. There ain't a lot in it. If I had someone on this video with me and they were arguing for Mount, I wouldn't put up much of a fight, to be honest, to say that that's the wrong decision. But yeah, I might just go for both of them. To hell with it. I don't really want a second defender right now anyway. Leaving that video there. Hopefully that's enough questions answered. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. I will be back tomorrow with the deadline stream ahead of the Game Week 34 deadline. Then there'll only be 4 game weeks left. Thank you very much for watching. Check out the article description below. I'll catch you again tomorrow.